Good morning, I'm Rowena Crosby.
And I'm Deborah Renner, and we're your co-hosts for this show. Thank you for joining us for the next 17 minutes for Your Invisible Toolbox, the show that's designed around the book, Your Invisible Toolbox, that Ro and I co-authored. And it looks at the tools that are essential for working effectively with others.
And we're delighted to be streaming live this morning from the Tero International Studio in Des Moines, Iowa. And we're going to be taking a look at a tool that is something I think we all struggle with, and it's that topic of work-life balance. So we'll invite you to be thinking about what you've done and share your ideas on how we can all get better at this. According to Ernst & Young, they have a global generation research study. Nearly 1/3 of millennials say that balancing this work and life is becoming a challenge, and 47% say that they're working more hours.
Well, it's Monday morning. We all feel a little bit
kind of felt that way
with regards to work-life balance. There's some other findings from that study. 61% of us actually worry about our work-life balance. 59% of us feel it affects our interpersonal relationships and it comes up in the form of stress, and 70% of us have had our health affected by it. So when we think about that, we all feel like we have more to do than we have time to do it, and that we have more diverse things that we have to attend to.
Exactly. So we all struggle for this work-life balance, but is there even such a thing as work-life balance?
Well, that's what we're going to explore today. We're going to take a look. We're following along in chapter 83, which was actually called Lessons from the Playground. You'll have to dip in the book to see why it was called that. But we're going to take a look at the concept of work-life balance.
And you've got a copy of the book if you're a recent Tero graduate, because all of our workshop participants get a copy. For those of you that don't, it's available on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble. Our development challenge today is going to really challenge our notion of what this work-life balance thing is. And our invisible tool of the week is going to help us figure out how to make the best of every moment.
And at Tero International, we love to challenge and debunk myths around interpersonal skills. Today, we're going to debunk 3 myths around work-life balance. We're also going to take a quiz. Those are always so much fun. We're going to take a quiz to find out how present we actually are.
And so to help you participate in that quiz, make sure you've got a pen and a piece of paper handy. About 10 minutes from now is when we'll get into the quiz. So let's get started.
Now, Ernst & Young, in that survey, they actually surveyed 9,700 individuals ages 18 to 67, cross-industry, and actually across the world. They had respondents from US, UK, Japan, China, Mexico, Germany, and they found actually 4 things that are important to think about.
There were 4 fascinating findings. The first one is that work-life balance is really a worldwide thing. That approximately half of managers say they're working more hours than they have in the last 5 years, and they're all working more than 40 hours a week.
And I was glad to hear that was a worldwide generalization that they found out, because a lot of times people just attribute that to the United States.
Right.
But that was worldwide.
Yeah, it's catchy.
They also found people are quitting their jobs. They're quitting their jobs because they really don't want to have all of the overtime hours that they have to have with regards to their position. And the other thing is they didn't feel like the situation they're in was providing enough flexibility.
Right, and that's really the third thing that this study revealed, is that people want flexibility, and they don't want the flexibility to hurt their chance of promotion or career advancement.
Yeah, and the 4th thing they found out is similar to what Ro and I found out when we were doing the research for the book, is that the millennial generation, managing work and family responsibilities seems to be an even greater challenge. Most of them are in partnerships or have a spouse who's also working, and so finding time for me, just personal time, finding time to sleep, many people feel that no matter what the generation.
Yes.
And also just being able to manage their personal and professional lives as effectively as they wanted to is not something that's necessarily happening.
So we invite you to help us out here. If there's something that you're doing that is helping you get a little bit of better balance in your life, please share it with us right in the comment section, because I think what some people are doing maybe isn't helping them that much. We'll give you a few examples of what folks are doing. So we know that women are taking a break from their work more frequently than their male counterparts, 50% compared to 22%. But what are the men doing that are trying to achieve some work-life balance? Well, they're changing jobs. They're giving up promotions more than their female counterparts. They're willing to move closer to family, and they're taking pay cuts.
Well, and the females, by stepping aside from work, are losing promotions and taking pay cuts as well. And 1 in 10 say they've suffered a negative consequence of really the result of going for more of a flexible time schedule. And usually it's in the loss of a promotion.
Absolutely. So is balance even possible? Well, the answer may lie less in what we do and more in how we do it. So let's take a look at our invisible tool of the week.
Our invisible tool of the week, found in chapter 83, is easier said than done in all aspects of our life, to be fully present.
And we can get some insight from a book that many of you are probably familiar with. It's just a classic, and go pick up a copy if you haven't seen it. It's called Tuesdays with Maury. The author is Mitch Albom, and he shares lessons that he acquired through an elderly teacher who was in final stages of his life.
And in the book, Mitch describes being with Maury like this. He said, "I came to love the way Maury lit up when I entered the room. He did this for many people I know, but it was his special challenge or special talent to make each visitor feel that the smile was unique for them." That's a good feeling.
That is a good feeling. And the lesson, as you said, it's easier said than done. The lesson that Maury taught this young author is that he believes in being fully present. So when he's in his presence, he's fully in his presence. And he's not thinking about what they talked about last week, or what's going to happen on Friday, or what medications he's on, or what other random thoughts he's having. He dedicates himself to being fully present in the moment. Simple strategy.
Wow. And you know, that is the ticket to work-life balance. And we can't legitimately think that our work is going to be 8 hours, our home life will be 8 hours, our personal time will be 8 hours, our sleep. You know, we can't have those allotted increments of time. And so we've got to be able to really be fully present in the moment.
And that's really the magic, is the balance comes from being fully engaged in whatever we're doing at that moment.
And I can't say I was that way this morning. You know, you have to be conscious about it. You really have to ask it of yourself. Now, athletes do ask this of themselves. And
certainly when they're at work.
When they're at work. You know, we have in chapter 83 a couple great stories of athletes that we noted over time that were able to do this. And the first one that comes to mind is an Iowa native, Shawn Johnson. She's now Shawn Johnson East, I believe. And she was an Olympic medalist in gymnastics. And when we watched her competing at the Olympics, it was really interesting. She powdered up her hands. They had a long distance shot of her over there powdering up her hands. And then the camera zoomed in on her face. And you could clearly see she was in an auditorium of, you know, thousands of people, events going on around her, people that were shouting and talking. And yet on her face you could see she was concentrating on two things. One, herself and what she needed to do. And it wasn't another person. In this case, it was the balance beam. Herself and the balance beam, total focus.
And that led to a gold medal. And our other example is another Olympian, Michael Phelps. And there was a great race he was in, very tight race. The newscasters were bantering back and forth during the race. Is the stress, is the tension going to get to him? And one of them commented, "Watch when he comes up for air. Take a look at the look on his face and your answer will be there." And when he came up for air, he looked completely calm, and he did win the race. He was able to focus so heavily and not allow all the stress of that challenge to hurt his performance.
I remember watching that. It was a really close race. It wasn't clear that he was going to win, so it was pretty interesting. Well, when we think about it, what does it tell us about work-life balance? It's being able to have a fluidity of moving from one context of our lives to another and engage fully in whichever one we're in. That's really the balance, just like those athletes are able to do with regards to their sport.
Exactly. So let's take a look at our development challenge to figure out what we as ordinary people can do to have better balance in our lives.
Well, in this segment, we always take a look at changing a habit or doing something new.
And like most things in life, as we've said, this is a little easier said than done. It's a discipline and it's an agreement that we really need to make with ourselves to pay attention to what's in front of us and not be distracted by other things.
And to be present in all areas of our life, we really have to be planful. And it's interesting, if we plan for the things that we want to have happen, the people that we want to be around, the experiences that we want to have. And most of our work life is scheduled, it is planned.
Mm-hmm.
But what about our personal life? Would we benefit from actually doing some planning around that to make sure it includes what we want?
Exactly. It doesn't have to be huge planning activities. Something as simple as just writing down what's important to you can allow you to focus a little more on your personal life.
Yeah, and giving some thought, what do we want to accomplish either in our family life, maybe it's in our marriage, maybe it's regards to exercise or recreation. What do we want to have happen, and designing opportunities to create the opportunity for those things to be in our lives.
Yes, and to really think about it, it's estimated that up to 90% of our day we're just operating out of habit, these unconscious routines that we're in. And if we can give some attention to how that time is invested, maybe we can achieve better balance.
Yeah, and just the simple things that we do each day, infusing ourselves in them. If we're shuttling the kids around in the car, can we engage with them in a way that we're fully present with them, making good use of that time? Or if it's on our goal to read more and to extend ourselves that way, if we have commute time, putting a podcast on or an audio book, and we're able to be present with the things that we want to make sure we accomplish.
That are important. And we have to say, because we know many of you are probably thinking these devices, how many times have you been out for dinner with family or friends, or you're in a meeting and we're allowing ourselves to get distracted by the technology? Just put it away and spend time with the people you're with instead of with the device.
Yeah, and it's like running your life rather than letting it run you.
Yes.
Or running this versus letting it run you. And so as we challenge you this week, take a critical look at what are you doing with your time? How are you spending your time at work? How are you spending it at home? And what do you want to see as a result? And are there any items that you are engaging in that really aren't providing you a lot of value? And are there things you're doing that if you could be more present, it would bring you greater value? Well, now we're going to take a look at those myths. This is a segment we call the Mythbuster. We love to debunk interpersonal skills myths, and
There's a lot of them.
We're going to debunk 3 myths around work-life balance, and these come to us from Andrew May of The Nest. And so we're going to take a look at 3. Ro, will you start us off?
I will. So our first myth we want to debunk is this whole compartmentalizing strategy of 8 hours for work, 8 hours for sleep, 8 hours for personal life. This myth really originated in the 1980s. In 2017, it's time to let go of it. This isn't a mathematical equation. This is a focus issue, and trying to just compartmentalize is not the solution.
Myth number 2. Hours worked equal productivity. Oh, we know this one's busted. We know we have meetings and we have emails that really get in the way. They might take up hours, but they don't produce. And so we do time audits. A lot of our executive coaching clients come in and we'll ask them to do a time audit to see how they're spending their time. 15 minutes, how are you spending every 15-minute increment in 24 hours? Those are so revealing.
They are.
And it really reveals that it's focus and less distractions that are going to increase productivity, not just adding more time.
And our biggest myth to debunk is this one around technology. If you're waiting for the next great technological advance that miraculously is going to give you all this work-life balance, stop waiting. The technologies that we have certainly have helped our lives in many ways, but not in terms of giving us more work-life balance. We're tethered to these things 24/7, and actually we're working more hours because of technology and not less.
So it's clear that we have to ask ourselves to be fully present and actually plan for the things we want to have happen in order to design the opportunities that are going to create the balance that we like.
Absolutely. Well, now we're moving into the segment we call this week's quiz. This quiz comes to us from Ben Michaelis of Psychology Today, and it is about living in the now.
Yeah, it's called Do You Live in the Now? The quizzes are always fun. So we hope that you got that piece of paper and that pencil or pen out that Ro suggested earlier. And what we're going to ask you to do, we're going to give you 3 different quiz questions, and there'll be 3 responses for each question. We'll ask you to choose the number of the response that fits you. Then we're going to calculate the results and find out how fully present we are.
So the first question, reflect back on the past week that you've just had, and how much time did you spend being fully present in the now? So score yourself a number 1 If you felt like, yeah, most of the time I was fully present and living in the now, score yourself a 2. If you felt like some of the time fully present, but brief flashes of being in and out, and score yourself a 3 of virtually none of the time were you fully present, that you found yourself distracted an awful lot of the time.
We hope you're fully present to mark number 3. That's your choice. All right, take a look at this one. During the past week, how many times have you been so immersed in a task or an activity that when it ended, you were surprised at how quickly the time passed? Score yourself a 1 if you felt like that at least 5 times. Score yourself a 2 if you felt that way at least once, but not as many as 5. And score yourself a 3 if you didn't feel that at all in the past week.
And isn't that a great feeling when you're so immersed in a task that the time just seems to evaporate?
They call it the flow.
The flow, the zone. Okay, our final question. Right now, watching this program, how focused are you on what's going on here? Score yourself a 1 if you're 100% here with us right now. Score yourself a 2 if you'd say, well, I'm kind of 70% with you, but my mind's wandering to a couple other things. And score yourself a 3 if you're realizing you're going to need to rewind a little bit of this program so you can pick up the stuff that you missed because you were distracted.
All right, so tabulate your totals of what it is you selected, and we're going to take a look at what the end result is on Do You Live in the Now? If you had a total score from 3 to 5, you are living in the now. Great for you. You are fully present. We cannot distract you, even if we tried.
The Buddha-like people.
The Buddha-like. Total score was 6 to 7. You have moments of being in the now, but also moments of being absent. And if your score was 8 to 9, hello, are you there?
Squirrel, squirrel.
We're not sure. You're not as present. You're more absent.
Well, those of you that follow Tero on social media already know that we post useful links and content several times every day on interpersonal skills topics. We're going to feature 2 of them today. Our first featured post is to a Forbes article. It's titled The Multitasker's Guide to Being More Present. The author, Christy Hedges, gives us some tips on how to be more present when we're at work. That'll be on all Tero social media platforms today.
And our second post comes from Tim Ferriss, and it provides a strategy that's really unique for defining what's most important to spend our time on. And it's a process he's defined as, rather than goal setting, fear setting. Kind of counterintuitive.
Kind of fascinating.
But what he says is the things we're reluctant to do are many times the things that if we would do them would infuse our life. And so it's just going to be interesting to be able to take a look at this. In fact, I was interested yesterday. Huffington Post also recommended this yesterday.
So they're copying us.
And so take a look at this. It's going to be on all social media platforms for Tero on Thursday.
Well, thank you for joining us today. If you missed any portion of the program or you want to share it with others, you'll find the entire program loaded up to Tero's YouTube channel. Tune in again next Monday morning at 9:03 Central, where we'll explore another one of the 100 tools that are presented in your Invisible Toolbox.
And we welcome your feedback and suggestions for future shows. What team interactions, leadership situations would you like to see us address? You can email your ideas to ideas@yourinvisibletooolbox.com. Also follow us on your favorite social media platform and on Instagram, Your Invisible Toolbox. And if you haven't subscribed to Tero's YouTube channel, if you will, you'll be alerted to when future shows are going to air. And we're just thrilled to be able to thank today our Director of Marketing, Kyle Plummer, for his cameraman and directing this show, and also Rachel Trainham, who is from Tero as well, who is assisting.
And thanks to all of you for joining us, and that's a wrap.